Hi, here we are with Meredith Mahler. We're marital law and estate planning expert and attorney at Bernstein Shur out of Boston and Portland, Maine. Meredith, thank you for being with us today to provide your subject matter expertise in this interview.
Thank you, CJ. It's great to be with you.
Great sound. Now we got our technical difficulties taken care of. Yeah, so this edition, you may have read, we're calling it part 2, beneficiaries, trustees, and executors. However, I think it's part 4. We got lost somewhere in the in our year of our estate planning series. So without further ado, first question, general, barn burner. Why is estate planning so misunderstood? And why is it so important?
I think it's misunderstood because there's a lot of gatekeeping around it. It's sort of these really bloated documents with a lot of shalls and shoulds. And people are, particularly your audience, are used to experience it from sort of their grandparents or parents in a way that's overly complicated. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I think the reason it's so vital is that the law, if you pass away without a will, which we call dying intestate, it defaults to beneficiaries and distributions you wouldn't necessarily want. So particularly for someone who is unmarried and has children, if you were to pass away, it would benefit your parents rather than perhaps your partner. So after you've worked so hard to build wealth, you can sort of see that disappear as part of that process.
So a lot of times people, your clients don't even know you did a great job until something goes bad, until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So when you do great, the fact that nothing happens, that's good, but no, you don't really get that thank you, that big thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we have the highest liability insurance, and it's because it can be decades down the line. And knock on wood, I've never had an issue. But it's also when things go well, I also don't hear from them because it has been so smooth. And that is another reason why estate planning is so crucial. Is that in a time of terrific grief, it's somewhat of a relief to have things be spelled out and be very clear, even if really, really simple.
So given that you have a near perfect and a perfect record,
knock on wood.
Knock on, I don't have any wood. I have Formica here, so I don't know if it's going to, oh, there's some wood.
Okay, perfect.
Can you share an example of a situation with a family that saved, that you know of, that saved significant legal and financial challenges? And of course, we don't need to know their name.
Right. So I teach a lot of trust and estates, and I like rock and roll. So these were not clients, but I think this is a great example.
Okay.
And so I'm going to give you a bad and a good. So Jim Morrison of the Doors, he has a simple will, passes away at 27, leaves everything to his girlfriend, Pamela. So we're talking copyright, publishing, image, everything like that. Yeah, leaves it to his girlfriend, Pamela Corson. 2 years later, Pamela passes away. Pamela has no will.
Oh my
so
gosh.
The publishing, copyright, image, everything goes to the Corson family. And so at that point, Jim Morrison's family sues, and now they're still splitting it 50-50. The royalties from the Doors go 50-50 to the Corson and the Morrison family. Okay. Bad example.
So these are Corsons that now own Tampa Bay Devil Rays?
I would assume so. Yeah, they own a lot of stuff at this point. So that's kind of like a really good example of, like, you wouldn't think Jim Morrison, 27, makes a will. At that point, the Doors weren't even that big, but Pamela's family went on to do very well by it. So now I have a good example. How did you like the Catcher in the Rye movie?
I'm not sure it was for me, but I love the book.
Well, that's a good question. It didn't exist, and that is good estate planning. So J.D. Salinger, there's never been one.
He has never allowed. Oh, you caught me.
I never allowed it. And so when he passed away, his literary agent, the rights to Catcher in the Rye are in a trust, and no one knows who the trustees are. And there's never been a Catcher in the Rye movie. That is very good estate planning. So that kind of legacy is when you have a really seamless transition. Anytime you have an estate like Michael Jackson, or you have Prince or something, or even Aretha Franklin, someone who passed away with what's called a holographic will, a handwritten will. She had maybe half a dozen that were like found behind couch cushions and stuff like that. It ties up estates. Like it took forever to make a biopic about her. So that is really sort of the worst case scenario. And so when you hear about it, it's gone poorly. And when it goes well, it is incredibly sad, but a private sort of efficient transfer of wealth. One of like, I have a 4-year-old, but the saddest way to put him through college is on the back of probate litigation and somebody who passes away without a will.
Very interesting. So that lends in that I'm thinking of that example of J.D. Salinger's executor. Isn't that would that be his executor that's in trust?
That is, we actually don't know who the trustees are. So they did such a good job. It's his literary agent who came out and said, there will never be a movie. And
so the literary agent is not the trustee.
Not the trustee. We don't even know who the trustees are. So no one is knocking at their doors. And the urban legend is Michael Eisner wants to make a Catcher in the Rye with German Shepherds.
With German Shepherds?
German Shepherds, yeah.
Really? As a child? Interesting.
Well,
okay, so I was using that as a springboard to say what qualities for, should someone look for in an executor or a trustee?
That's a great question. And those are really two different roles. So when we're talking about an executor.
Let's explain that right now.
Absolutely. So an executor is someone or a personal representative, depending on the state you're in. They're the person, when you pass away, ensures that your assets make it to the right place. So they would be like signing an agreement with a real estate agent to sell your home. If there was a painting, if they were making sure your funeral expenses get paid, they sign your final tax return. It is a really short-term post. And a lot of times, like firms like mine are hired to do everything from, we can be the ones to sign it if they delegate it. So it's sort of that. And it's someone who, I would suggest someone who's pretty organized, because sort of from the moment of passing, you're asking them to collect all of somebody's mail, to ensure that their vehicles are retitled in the name of the estate, their home. I sort of live for these anecdotes, but a guy's ex-wife burned down his house the day after he died. And yeah, I don't know why he waited till after he died. But he did it, or she did it the day after he died. And so because the home hadn't been titled in the name of the estate, there was absolutely no insurance proceeds. So that's something like you sort of need a personal representative who has their finger on the beat of stuff like that. But their job ends. And so it's about a year if they have to go through full probate. A trustee, however, is someone who, trusts are sort of hard to explain other than think of them as like a special purpose bank account, and a bank account that says money can be spent for health, education, maintenance, and support, which is lawyer speak for everything and nothing. Right. This is the person who writes the checks from the bank account and says what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. And in the case of someone like me who has a 4-year-old, I'd be looking at a trustee that could be serving through preschool, the dinosaur obsession as we move into Matchbox cars, and then real big car. Yeah, as a father of boys, then the cars become bigger and more expensive. And then you go into college and stuff like that. And so it could be quite a long time. And so I'm sort of thinking about two jobs. The first is, and I don't want to wander into your world, is a trust making money? This is an investment account. A banking account is kind of a poor way to describe it, but an investment account. And do they know my values and what I want for my son well enough that when they write those checks, they have confidence?
So the trustee is basically the CEO.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
Got it. Thank you. And by the way, I guess I should have disclosed the fact that Meredith is actually my estate planning attorney, and I'm going through this right now. At my age, 57, 2 sons, 4 and 2 years old. And I'm trying to figure out who I can trust. Luckily I have some dear friends who are very trustworthy, very smart, and all CEOs. So I think I'm in good shape. In fact, my sons would probably be in better shape with them than with me, but they got me. So they're going to have to live with that. Yeah.
I think my son has chosen T-Rex or Indiana Jones to be his guardian at this
His
point.
guardian.
So,
I should ask my
I'm
sons.
trying to see if Indiana Jones can be trustee.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of those, another segue moment, beneficiaries.
yeah,
Updating beneficiaries seems to be a recurring theme. I mean, we've talked about it for my plan. Now that I have beneficiaries, or at least, children, what should prompt that beneficiary update? What life events? What do you see as the things that trigger a review of beneficiaries?
well, first of all, like this is an amazing question, because this is a thing that everybody gets wrong. They don't pay enough attention to beneficiaries, may it be in a will, an IRA, a transfer on death account, anything like that, or even like a digital, like who you name as your custodian. They're not revisited enough. And in some states, even if you get legally divorced, an ex-spouse can still benefit if they're still listed as a beneficiary. So amazing question. So I actually have a really nice sort of, I don't know if it's a mnemonic, but I call it the 5 Bs, which is diagnosis, divorce, death. And it could be death of a partner, death of a parent, death of a grandparent, death of a child. So what's I say? Diagnosis, divorce, death, departure, meaning if you move to another state, if you get property in another state, and then decade. I think decade is a bit long. Like a decade is when you should call your attorney to check in, because it's really sort of an iterative process. But I like to say duo, meaning every couple of years, just kind of take a look and go, is this still what I want? But decade, I mean, it depends on the client. I tend to be an attorney who likes to see people once a year, check in, talk about how things have changed.
Wait. How often do people check in on their estate plan once a year?
Well, you, CJ, I'm going to see quarterly. No,
yeah, exactly. No, too often.
No,
way too often.
It depends on, it really is those events. Like people have big years where things will sort of stabilize, where you have minor children. And then the kids hit 18 and things change. And then they sort of go out in the world. So it's like those 10 years are kind of good prompts of, and that's the changes I see. And it's not necessarily a whole cloth, we're redoing an entire plan. I would also say under death, we're talking about also like liquidation events. May it be, an inheritance, or you're exiting a company, or you're starting a company. Part of my intro, I do a lot of business succession planning with startups of like the day they start. I'm there in the room talking about like, what does your LLC say? And do you have a proxy? What happens if you're incapacitated? Let's get that stuff in place. And so it could be all these different versions of that. You're leaving one job and heading to another job. What do those, people sort of not necessarily think they have wealth right now, but do you have the ability under the LLC agreement, if you're in a startup or an operating agreement, to leave those interests to a partner, to a child?
Let's talk about that, because wow, what another perfect segue moment. What are the common mistakes? I mean, I'm thinking about that one for a second. I don't think, as you were speaking, I don't think our LLCs and all of our funds have a proxy in terms of what if I'm capacitated. Frankly, I think I'm living forever, so I'm not sure it's really needed. I'm not sure. In fact, I think this whole conversation is moot in my case, because I am Moses.
So that's a mistake that I think they're going to live forever.
Listen,
I'm not, no, I'm not offering you anytime soon, but it is I'm going to live forever. And I genuinely hope that's the case. Is I say to people like, may your last check bounce, and most of this stuff you don't need. It's like an insurance policy. But I've seen, when you talk about like a worst case scenario, it's something like you and a partner have a going business, whether or not it's profitable or not. One person becomes incapacitated or passes away, and the surviving partner unwittingly is now in business with somebody's 20-year-old kid, or a spouse who's like, I'm going to pull money out of the business. Or because they don't have a will, it's locked up in probate for 6 to 12 months. And there's literally nobody who can speak on behalf of the deceased partner. There's nothing they can do. You don't have a power of attorney. You don't have a personal representative. So you are killing companies like that. We hate to see a fire sale. And so those are sort of, and those like a proxy, the documents in some ways that I find the most impactful are the cheapest and easiest to do. A power of attorney, a proxy, a healthcare directive, and a living will, because things can be slowed down so much, and particularly when there's not clarity, it's really easy to plan for married couples who have one kid. And the same is true for LGBTQ plus couples. If you're married with one kid, really clear. Things are a lot more difficult. And even sort of at the time when you're building wealth and you're younger and it doesn't feel like you can afford documents, you're also at the most at risk. So like I say, you know, for like your living will or healthcare directive, your partner, your best friend, whomever in your life might be the best person to decide what you want to occur if you're in a persistent vegetative state. But instead, under the law, if you don't identify someone, you're going to have your parents step in. And for a lot of people, maybe they're not the people who really know their values.
Or maybe they're dead.
Or maybe
Like
they're
me.
dead. Exactly. And so
they're not going to be answering any situation if I'm a persistent vegetative state.
Right. And at that point, you are sitting in a hospital, and the hospital is going to their legal board, and then they're going to the courts, and they're trying to find someone to get appointed. So again, that's sort of, it's not the mistakes, but those are things that are really quick, easy documents to do that will smooth things over and help in a situation when time is of the essence, because when you need those, you need to act quickly.
So, okay, we went through common mistakes. Then here's a bigger, I guess, a mistake in understanding, in perception. Many young adults, definitely younger than me, think estate planning, as I talk to them and I'm giving classes and talking to university students all over the country, they think it's not for them. They say, yeah, I have 30 years to worry about that. And I keep saying, oh, no, you don't. And it's not getting through. How do you address this misconception? Because you're the expert. I'm just maybe a peer or an older peer who is telling them what to do. Like, okay, boomer. By the way, everyone here, I'm not a boomer. So they just say that because it does hurt my feelings, and they want to. How do you address the misconception that estate planning is not for the young?
That's a great question. And besides, I'm a bajillion-year-old, 40 blah blah blah. So I'm with you there. Yeah, it's really hard because it is a luxury product, and I absolutely appreciate that when you're looking at a budget, that it's hard to justify it. What I will say is that I sort of lay out the worst examples of, do you want law to take over? And here's a great thing that I've had to address even this past Friday. We've been thinking a lot about is my firm, Bernstein Shur. We have a family formation practice. It's not a family law practice, it's family formation, which is IVF, gender confirmation, adoption, sperm donor contracts, stuff like that. And what comes with that is you're having a baby and you're thinking, I need estate planning. And because of the recent election, we've seen this enormous influx of individuals going, oh my gosh, the law is going to change. So we're looking for a way to make it affordable and efficient. And rather than in the past, there's sort of bloated shall blah, blah, blah documents, we've been able to strip them down. So I have stuff like, my documents have no gender in them. It's parent, it's partner, stuff like that, where you can have things be a lot more straightforward. Also, there's a lot more technical savvy. The things that drove up costs in the past were, I hope I don't speak out of turn, but our ability to collaborate on a site, an external site. Like, I may be born in the 80 something, but I do still know how to do like a SharePoint collaborative site. We learned through COVID that we can do a Zoom. People don't need to come into the office. And I can have questionnaires that are really a lot more, I don't want to say plug and play, but I can do almost set pricing at this point for this influx. So it's about creativity, and I don't think there's any need to gatekeep it. And so but it's not as onerous of a process sometimes as I think that it used to be. And I think something like this is so crucial because making it feel more approachable, more tangible,
More
taking out
accessible,
stuff, more accessible, breaking,
yeah.
having the language, like even the thing, like in the past, all documents were third person, mine are first person.
Well, I'm sure you lose a lot of the younger audience as soon as you say persistent vegetative state. I mean, like, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
Don't want to hear about vegetation. I don't want to hear about being a vegetable.
Right. Or yanking the plug, something like that.
Yeah,
And that's something like approaching that document is one way where I don't even have people do it. Like sitting in a lawyer's office and telling me like, what do you want to happen for your funeral? I say, go home, have a glass of wine, beer, tea, whatever your poison is, and just like talk about it and then come back to me.
All right. So I'm going to try and do a quickie little last question. What is, I was going to ask you how you feel about the online services, but yeah, we'll leave that to another time.
No, I can absolutely speak to that. I think for certain documents, I think they're really great. And I think that I would be foolish not to integrate some of it into my practice because it can make it more affordable. It can make it more efficient. However, sort of online drafting programs, they're so sort of over lawyered that I find the documents tend to be about 100 pages. Well, I can bring mine down to 10. Like I still need to have a conversation with you. And so I can say like, yes, perhaps there are really sort of like basic, straightforward documents, but there are ones that like, we should have a conversation about it. And it doesn't have to be at whatever hundreds of dollars an hour in my office. Let's do a Zoom. Let's do like when it makes sense and get you out the door with that.
So simple is still possible. I mean, Jim Morrison, you just say, bring back the Jim Morrison example. He wrote, what, he write it on one piece of paper and the Corsons are now billionaires?
I mean,
half a paragraph?
Right. So it's sort of like, even if you do some great planning, you got to think about the next generation. So I think that is the intersection I'm thinking a lot about and again, it is because I'm not asking clients to fill out handwritten questionnaires. They're going online, they're filling it out, they're uploading. We're able to provide that type of security.
Well, actually, I love that we had it was longer because I talked too much, but we had about 1 hour conversation, which for me was much better than a cut and dried questionnaire fill out that doesn't really give the context and the color of life, because estate planning is you're doing a memoir, basically.
That's exactly right.
You're dictating a memoir to an attorney who is going to draft from that memoir. So filling out a questionnaire is not what anyone wants to do. All right, last question. What's step one? What is very, very, I mean, other than go see Meredith, what is step one?
Step one is the why. And it is that why does it matter to you to protect your legacy and what you want? Because I have 99-year-olds, I have 19-year-olds, I have 57-year-olds, and I have 42-year-olds. And my first question I ask when anybody comes to my office is, why estate planning now? And it's generally a horror story, a diagnosis, a death, something like that. But engagement in the process and having that conversation we talked about as an hour about like, I'm learning about your values. And like, that's where the legalese come in. You can count on me to be like, when you talk about what is important to you, what are your values? If God forbid, knock on wood, something were to happen to you, that your children can carry on the things that helped you build your business, helped your family build your business, that they have those, that is carried forward. That is what I can help you do. So it's like the why. And when you come in with the why, you come in with that questionnaire filled out and we will zoom right through and we'll make it efficient. If I'm dragging you through the process and you don't want to be there, or you don't think it's worthwhile, like, I get it. But if it's collaborative, and that's always the thing, I think, and it's also right fit. That's also something that I always say, is that when you get to why you want to do it and you find an attorney, don't be afraid to fire an attorney. I don't actually start billing until after the first meeting, because I say, like, this is about us working together and it's about us finding the right fit. And if you don't feel comfortable with me, that's okay. I'm not offended. I'm not going to charge you. So that's also the thing, is like, it hits for you and you feel like you can trust this person.
So step one, find your why.
Yeah.
For me, again, transparently, it was legacy and love. I love my family. I want to help. I want their future to be as great as my present. And legacy, well, I don't want to be forgotten. I'm very egotistical that way. I don't want to I don't want to be sand blowing in the wind. Come on, give me a plaque or something, for God's sakes. Well, anyway, thank you very much. This has been awesome. I think we're gonna close on identifying your why. I think that is a great first step. And if anyone takes any takeaway from this, that's it, right? And the fact that the Corsons are really wealthy from Jim Morrison's music.
Really well.
By this time, I'm sure we lost a lot of the, the watchers. So, but we are gonna social media post out. We're going to post about the identifying your why. I love that takeaway as a beginning. Thank you again, Meredith, especially on a Saturday, taking your time. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Good to see you, CJ. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.